Here is something the beer industry hopes you never think about. Beer is the only major packaged beverage sold in the United States where the manufacturer has zero legal obligation to print the ingredient list on the label. Your shampoo tells you more about what is inside it than your six-pack does. Your bottle of ketchup tells you more. Even your stick of chewing gum tells you more. And yet, Americans spend over $40 billion on beer every year, most of it on the same 6 brands, made with the same 3 shortcuts, sold under the same promise of refreshment. You are not getting what you are paying for. You are getting what they could afford to make after the Super Bowl ad budget was settled. Today, we are auditing the beer aisle, brand by brand, ingredient by ingredient. We will show you which 6 brands are running a cost-cutting playbook that they have spent decades making sure you never read. And at the end, we will show you 3 brands that still brew beer the way beer is supposed to be made. With 4 ingredients, a real process, and nothing to hide. I spent 3 weeks pulling ingredient disclosures, legal filings, and brewing process records to find the truth, and the results were not what I expected. Let's talk about how real beer is made, because the math will make everything else make sense. To brew a proper lager, you need 4 ingredients: water, malted barley, hops, and yeast. That is it. Germany codified this as law in 1516, Brera, the Reinheitsgebot, or the beer purity law. Malted barley is the backbone. It provides the sugars that ferment into alcohol, the proteins that hold the foam, and the malt flavor that makes beer taste like beer. But malted barley costs roughly $1.50 per pound to process. Corn syrup costs about 40 cents per pound. Rice adjuncts cost even less. So the math is simple. Replace 30 to 40% of your barley with corn or rice, and you slash your raw material costs by a third. The alcohol percentage stays the same. Corn and rice ferment just as efficiently, but the flavor, the body, and the foam are gone. What you are left with is a thin, pale liquid that technically qualifies as beer under US law, but shares almost nothing with the product that law was designed to describe. That is where the second trick comes in. Macro breweries use a process called high-gravity brewing. They brew beer at double the target strength, then dilute it with de-aerated water at the packaging line. One brew kettle now produces double the volume. The problem is that dilution destroys whatever foam and body was left. So they add a chemical foam stabilizer, propylene glycol alginate, to fake the head back. You crack open the can, see a brief head of foam, and your brain says quality. That foam is not from malt, it is from a polymer stabilizer. Here is the part that ties it all together. Under the TTB's regulations entitled 27 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 7, standard malt beverages do not require full ingredient disclosure. They only need to flag specific allergens or non-traditional additives under narrow circumstances. The breweries know this. They have lobbied to keep it this way for decades. The label says brewed with the finest ingredients. The ingredients are not listed. That is not an accident. The skip list: 6 brands to put back on the shelf. Brand 1, Bud Light. Bud Light is brewed with water, barley malt, rice, and hops. The percentage of rice in the grain bill is never disclosed. But in 2019, Anheuser-Busch ran Super Bowl ads mocking Miller Lite for using corn syrup, and in doing so, accidentally confirmed to the entire country that Bud Light uses rice as its primary adjunct instead. A federal judge allowed Miller's countersuit to proceed, noting the ads were misleading. Flip the can. You will not find the word rice anywhere on it. Anheuser-Busch InBev spent approximately $1.3 billion on U.S. advertising in 2022 alone. The rice is cheaper than the billboard. Brand 2, Coors Light. The marketing angle for Coors Light is cold. The mountains are cold. The can turns blue when cold. The water is cold. Not once does the campaign mention what is actually in the cold can, which includes rice adjuncts and propylene glycol alginate for foam stabilization. In 2019, a class action lawsuit alleged that Coors misrepresented its primary brewing location to consumers. The Rocky Mountain branding implies a single pristine source. The beer is brewed in facilities across the country. Cold is not a quality standard. Cold is a distraction. Brand 3, Miller Lite. Miller Lite is brewed with corn syrup, not high fructose corn syrup. Regular corn syrup used as a fermentable sugar substitute during brewing. The brand's defense is that the corn syrup is fully fermented out by the time it reaches your glass. That is technically true of the syrup itself, but the reason it is used is because it is cheap, and the reason it is not prominently labeled is because it tests poorly with consumers. The More Taste slogan directly contradicts an adjunct grain bill that strips the malt body responsible for taste. Brand 4, Busch Light. Busch Light is brewed to one of the lowest IBU counts of any nationally distributed lager. meaning minimal actual hops are used per barrel. It is produced via high gravity dilution and uses corn adjuncts to replace a significant portion of the malt. The marketing imagery is hunting trips, open fields, and rural authenticity. None of that appears in the brewing process. The ingredient list tells a different story, one of water addition, corn, and a process designed to maximize volume while minimizing cost per unit. Brand 5, Natural Light. The name is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Natural Light, or Natty Light, is brewed at high gravity and diluted to approximately 4.2% ABV before packaging. It contains corn syrup, rice adjuncts, and chemical stabilizers. The word natural on a beer label has no regulated legal definition in the United States. A brewery can call a corn syrup diluted, chemically stabilized product natural and face zero regulatory challenge. That is not a food standard. That is a marketing decision. Brand 6, Keystone Light. Keystone Light is produced by Molson Coors in the same facilities as Coors Light, sharing significant process infrastructure. Its malt to adjunct ratio is among the lowest of any widely sold American lager, according to brewing industry formulation estimates. The smooth branding is the entire pitch, and in this case, smooth is an accurate description of a beer with so few hops and so little residual malt character that there is almost nothing left to taste. Corn adjuncts, high gravity dilution, and foam stabilizers. At least it is honest about being smooth. Before we get to the brands that get it right, here's a test you can run on any beer in your fridge right now. It takes 30 seconds and requires nothing but a clean glass. This is the head retention test. Pour your beer into a clean room temperature glass at a 45-degree angle. Let the foam settle, then watch it. Real malt forward beer, brewed with a high percentage of malted barley and whole hops, will hold a dense, creamy head for at least 2 to 3 minutes. The proteins in malted barley physically stabilize the foam. That is chemistry, not marketing. Now pour a Bud Light, or a Coors Light, or a Natty Light. Watch the head collapse in under 60 seconds. The barley proteins that create natural foam retention were diluted out of the product at the packaging line and replaced with a polymer stabilizer that cannot hold up past the first minute. The foam goes flat, the beer goes flat, and now you know why. If your beer cannot hold its own head for 2 minutes, the grain bill just told you everything the label refused to. The real list, 3 brands actually worth your money. Brand 1, Yuengling Traditional Lager DG. Yuengling & Son was founded in 1829 in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, making it the oldest operating brewery in the United States. It has survived Prohibition, 2 world wars, and over a century of acquisition attempts from the macro giants, Ditziu, and it is still family owned. Yuengling brews with malted barley and a small disclosed amount of corn grits, not to cut costs, but as a traditional part of its lager recipe consistent for decades. No high gravity dilution, no propylene glycol alginate. The ingredient list is short, honest, and has not changed. In most markets, a 6-pack of Yuengling costs the same as a 6-pack of Bud Light. You are paying the same price, you are getting actual beer. That is the value play this entire category refuses to offer you. And Yuengling has been quietly delivering it for nearly 2 centuries. Brand 2, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. In 1980, Ken Grossman built a brewery in Chico, California, using salvaged dairy equipment and a commitment to 100% malted barley and whole cone Cascade hops. No adjuncts, no high-gravity shortcuts, no artificial stabilizers. Over 40 years later, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is still brewed to the same standard, and the label discloses it. The hop character you taste is from real Cascade hops added at real cost. The foam that holds in your glass is from real barley malt protein, not a polymer. Sierra Nevada is now one of the largest craft breweries in America, which means you can find it almost anywhere. The price per ounce is comparable to most macro 6-packs. The difference is that you are paying for ingredients, not advertising. Ken Grossman never ran a Super Bowl ad. He spent that money on hops. Brand 3, Dogfish Head. 60-minute IPA founded in 1995 in Milton, Delaware by Sam Calagione, Dogfish Head built its reputation on a single labor-intensive idea, continuous hopping. The 60-minute IPA is hopped continuously for, you guessed it, 60 minutes during the boil, using a rotating blend of whole hops. This process requires real time, real hops, and real craft. The full grain bill is disclosed. There are no adjuncts, no dilution, no chemical foam agents. It costs more than a macro lager, and it should, because the brewing cost is genuinely higher. Every dollar above a Bud Light price point is a dollar that went into the kettle, not the marketing budget. When you hold this can and feel it cost a little more, that is not a premium for branding. That is the price of honesty. Here's the bottom line. The beer industry has spent decades perfecting the art of selling you water, corn syrup, and a logo at the price of a product that deserves none of that description. They do not have to list the ingredients. They know they do not have to. And they have built billion-dollar advertising empires specifically to make sure you never stop to ask. But now you know the head retention test. Now you know what high gravity dilution means. Now you know that natural, smooth, and cold filtered are marketing words with zero regulatory definition. Yuengling, Sierra Nevada, Dogfish Head, 3 breweries that still believe the product in the glass is the pitch. Your money deserves more than a corn syrup chemistry project with a mountain on the label. Real beer exists. You just have to know where to look. We audit so you don't have to. Subscribe for more. And share this with someone who still trusts the can.